Okay guys, so Rukshan's been a bad boy over Christmas and New Year's, so this is called a punish round, goes for 3 minutes. We're going to put him through the hard yards. Good, 10 seconds off. Drive. Well done. 4, 5.
So guys, thanks for joining me for my first training session back. I'm not going to make this a fitness vlog. I was just showing you that for fun. Let's catch up with the news now. As you can see, I'm on the road again. I hope you enjoyed the little funny intro that I had at the start. I will maybe do more of those type of intros. Let me know if you want to see more of my exercising routine throughout the coming vlogs. Now, today I've got a few stories from Australia first, followed by my coverage of Davos. First up in Australia, I wanted to discuss this issue around Australia Day. Now, it's been an ongoing theme, of course, because we've been talking about woke words. This is more than woke words now because I'm talking about Jacinta Allen, the current Labor Premier of Victoria. She was asked today whether we would have the Australia Day parade in Melbourne this year. Now, prior to COVID, we always had this Australia Day parade in Melbourne where we'd have this nice day. People would be marching down the street celebrating Australia Day, and it was a big thing, right? Since the COVID pandemic and Daniel Andrews canned Australia Day parade because we couldn't be close to each other for all types of reasons that we know are completely nonsense, they have not brought it back. Now, when she was asked today, this is what she had to say. That's not just a question for me, that's the question for the Australian Day Organising Committee that involves the city of Melbourne. What is important to note when we're talking about one parade in the centre of Melbourne is that there are events on Australia Day that are held in county communities, regional centres, and in the suburbs. There are a huge number of local events where local communities are coming together to mark Australia Day and mark it in a way that's appropriate to the community. And this is an important point because there are some in our community for whom Australia Day is a difficult day, and there are events and activities in their local communities to support them. So yeah, looks like it's not coming back. Can you imagine Melbourne City Council, Sally Cap, and those crooks there that do all sorts of things to disregard the spirit of Australia Day? Do you think they would bring it back? I'd be very shocked if they did. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. Obviously, it is just a parade, and Jacinta Allen is saying, well, you can have these other small events if you want to celebrate it, but we know where this is going, right? We know the push towards abandoning Australia Day. We saw the actions that Tennis Australia are taking. Of course, woke words, they're all a part of this. Again, what else are we going to find out about Australia Day in the next couple of days? The next story that I have to talk about today is around what's happening in Alice Springs. So I actually had the opportunity to go to Alice Springs about 6 months ago with Avi Yemeni from Rebel News, and we covered some of the tremendous, I guess, tragic situation that was happening there during that time. And that was during the election time when everyone was talking about Alice Springs, right? We had Dutton visiting there. I think we had Albo flying in to Alice Springs. Actually, I think it was during the tennis. So it was about 12 months ago, actually. Albo flew into Alice Springs for a couple of hours and then flew out to a tennis game or something like this. I remember that now. So again, over the last couple of days, we've had this tremendous spike in violence in Alice Springs with multiple clashes. We also had about 19 cars in an apartment block being vandalized. Now there's calls for a curfew. There's people within the community that are calling for the ADF to come to restore order. Over the last couple of hours in Alice Springs, there's been brawls between family groups on the streets, wielding weapons and machetes. The police would have to step in to sort some of this out. You have local kindergartens actually going into lockdown. This is an Australian city, and we're seeing it decaying into this much. It actually reminds me of some of the disaster we saw in Papua New Guinea not that long ago, where I think there was about 40-50 people actually killed over some strike issue. Again, it's not identical to that, but you can see we're having this type of violent issues in Australian cities as well, and Alice Springs continues to be in the news for this. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think we can actually solve this Alice Springs issue, or do you think all these leaders that we have, especially Labor now, after the voice to Parliament, they didn't pass, and all this kind of money that they put into that referendum, could that have been better spent on helping actually community up there with more solutions to not ensure that to ensure that actually children aren't on the streets causing this havoc? The next story I have is around Britney Higgins, that's right, David Shiraz, her partner, and Linda Reynolds. This doesn't actually involve Bruce Lehrman, the man that was alleged to have raped her. We saw how that all played out. Obviously, you all know about this trial and everything that happened, and the involvement of Lisa Wilkinson, and the defamation cases against her, and this defamation case, that case. So much stuff going on, right? Since all of this has gone down, we found out that Britney Higgins received a $2.4 million payout from the Australian government. Again, the details of which and how that came about has not really been disclosed, which is in itself a scandal, because what's the precedence to this kind of thing happening where there's no actual verdict of guilt against the person that's accused of doing this, and the evidence itself is all contentious, right? I know people get upset about when this issue is discussed because it has to do with sexual assault and believing all women and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, when the government's making these massive payouts, $2.4 million, you'd think it's predicated on something that has an official finding based on some type of fact. And we still don't know that. So she's got this $2.4 million payout. She's skipped out of the country with her boyfriend. They've bought a house in France somewhere. They're living in France. And Linda Reynolds, who was her boss at the time, who is suing her for defamation at the time, has now spoken to a French court, or they've put proceedings into a French court to freeze some of her assets there while this is taking place. That is this ongoing scandal involving Britney Higgins, the previous Labour government, really. We saw how involved they were politically in all of this. Katie Gallagher, even as far as I believe possibly the Prime Minister himself, Anthony Albanese. These things haven't really borne out because they've tried to shut it down as much as possible. But yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on that Britney Higgins' assets potentially in France might be frozen thanks to Linda Reynolds' lawsuit in the defamation case. That's an ongoing story. And the next story that I have is one that I was talking about a couple of days ago. This is for Kiwis in New Zealand. We saw one of your MPs shoplifting. I think she shoplifted. Now it's turned out to be about 3 stores. There's video evidence of this. Obviously, she's since stepped down, this Greens MP, heavily involved in activism and pontificating to the rest of us on how to be good people and all this kind of stuff. So she stepped down. But get this, right? The progressive liberal media in New Zealand, from what I can see, are now blaming everyone else for her shoplifting. Right, so she shoplifted these clothes and whatever. Well, I'm going to say allegedly, but it's on video, and she's been caught for it. She stepped down, but now they're blaming everyone else for her shoplifting. Now, you might think this sounds crazy, but I'm going to read you this article from One News because you have to hear it to believe how nonsensical this is. This is an analysis piece. Gaharaman's exit exposes the toll on female MPs. Analysis: the government needs to urgently fulfill its legal obligation towards women MPs, writes law expert Cassandra Magwe. This is complete nonsense. Listen to this article. The high-stress nature of working in politics is increasingly taking a toll on staff and politicians, but an additional threat to the personal well-being and safety of politicians resides outside Parliament. The threat is ubiquitous online violence against women MPs. Since her election in 2017's Green Party MP Golriz Gaharaman has been subject to persistent online violence. Gaharaman's resignation following allegations of shoplifting exposes the toll that sustained online violence can have on a person's mental health. In an interview with Vice in 2018, Gaharaman expressed how the online abuse was overwhelming and questioned how long she would continue in Parliament. Resigning in 2024, Gaharaman said in a statement, "It is clear to me that my mental health is being badly affected by the stresses relating to my work, and the best thing for my mental health is to resign as a member of Parliament." Many other women MPs have also been targeted and so on. But even in that first couple of paragraphs of this article, you can see how now they are blaming the public who criticize her online for her policies, her politics, and the fact that she gets involved in all types of, social justice warrior style activism. Of course, if you're going to put yourself out there as a politician and do this kind of activism, you are going to be, the target of people criticizing you. That's the part of being in politics. But now for these people, these experts in New Zealand, to turn it around and say, well, the fact that she shoplifted is because of the stressful nature of her job. I mean, isn't that completely ridiculous? What other industry or what other individual could turn around and be like, hey, look, I shoplifted because I was stressed. The reason I've been robbing these clothing stores, even though I'm on a salary of, more than the average typical salary, right? I think MPs in New Zealand are definitely on more than 150K, maybe 200K, upwards towards that amount. So to get that amount of money as a salary from the public, and then to have the privileges of probably having your transport covered, and your flights covered, any kind of work that you do is covered under those expenses on top of your salary, then to turn around and be like, oh, well, I was being criticized, it was all happening online, so I shoplifted. Now, she hasn't said this directly, but this is what is being inferred now in the analysis of this, right? And I think that's complete bullshit. If you're in New Zealand, let me know what your thoughts are. I can't believe I'm reading this crap, but in a way I can, because we're in 2024, social justice era, and this is the kind of nonsense that we have to put up with. That's my news stories for Australia and New Zealand. Of course, I've been covering Davos 2024 over the last couple of days. Yesterday, there was a lot going on as well, but there's an interesting news story that I wanted to get to you about Davos, and I think this is the most interesting aspect of what's going on in Davos. Now, I did touch on the fact that they're looking at misinformation and disinformation as their top number one priority. I believe that to be the case, right? They are fully gunning for this, and we shouldn't be distracted in a way by the other things that are happening there as well, because I feel like they are really honing in on this issue. Now, a big part of this is actually Australia. Australia is one of the biggest pieces to this thing that the WEF are putting together, and it comes from our e-safety commissioner, Julie Imam Grant, right? Julie has been going to the WEF, right? This safety commissioner who's on a couple of 100K, her whole team of about 3 or 4 people, they're costing us a couple of $1 million. These guys are completely involved in trying to censor Australians, cut whatever free speech privileges and rights that we have in this country. They are working, at breakneck speed to ensure that we lose these freedoms. So before I get to talking about Julie and just explaining a little bit about her, I just want to play you this video of her from the WEF forum and listen to what she's talking about here.
We're also very focused on transparency, and we've used our transparency powers to really find out what's happening under the hood. What technologies are you using? What are you doing or not doing to scan for child sexual abuse or terrorist content? We've just issued one against X Corp around online hate, where we were able to really get a sense of the extent to which they cut their safety engineers by 80%, their content moderators by 30%, their public policy people by 70%, and then they enabled previously suspended users. So it's like, Volvo firing their designers, their engineers, and then not letting the traffic infraction people and the ambulance in while putting all these dangerous drivers back on the road. You're creating a perfect storm for online hate. So there are lots of different tools in the toolbox that we'll be using differently, but ultimately the aim is transparency to achieve accountability and to get companies to raise their safety standards. So AI in 2023 changed all that. And now the UK Ofcom has online safety powers. Ireland has an online safety commissioner. We've got the DSA across Europe. We've started something called the Global Online Safety Regulators Network so that we can work together. And while political decisions and cultural context and history will determine what is considered safe or what is considered harm in any given country. We're starting those efforts now, but we are starting from behind. So we as governments have to work together to counter the wealth, the stealth, and frankly, the power of all these technology companies, and we need to work together to really force them to do better.
So that's Julie Imam Grant, our e-safety officer. Now, she doesn't have an Aussie accent because she's actually from America. She's an ex-Twitter employee. She's an ex-Microsoft employee. She's a congressional staffer at one point as well, I believe. So she's fully from the American tech system. And now what she's doing with the awesome power of the Australian government, running this e-safety commission, is really working hand in hand with the European Commission. You heard about the international partners. They're working on these AI tools to collaboratively censor, really, at the end of the day, let's just call it for what it is, censor speech online by saying that obviously they're trying to combat hate speech, they're trying to combat disinformation, and they're trying to combat misinformation. So these three things, which are often discussed at the World Economic Forum, Julie Imam-Grant has consistently, in her appearances there over the last couple of years, discussed these points, and Australia is at the forefront of pushing these things through. Now, she made a mention there of X. She obviously is going after Elon Musk over the last couple of months, and there's a case against Elon Musk in Australia, a fine for I think about $700,000 for not being in compliance and not allowing the e-Safety Commission to have certain access. So she has been going after Musk, and you can see in her previous history working at Twitter, she tried to push some of these things through and was unsuccessful. But now it's like having an old grudge against your employee, and she's like using her power now as an Australian regulator to do what she couldn't do while she was at Twitter against Elon Musk. Completely ridiculous. I think she's one of the most dangerous people in position of authority in Australia, empowered by obviously the government as a regulator, and there's multiple pieces to this, but she is a key component. Now, I would sort of show you also what the New York Times CEO said alongside someone else from the European Commission. Have a listen to these guys. And this is about the media and how they see misinformation and disinformation.
The platforms led to the proliferation of low quality content. And you asked what can be done about that. Better signals, tech providing better signals to distinguish between independent fact-based journalism and all the other stuff. Quite important, still plenty more work to do there. I think it's more than labeling. I mean, Google actually has been has made real progress on this over the years. It's how does search work? How are things indexed? We're entering a next chapter of the information.
So that's the CEO of New York Times, Meredith Levin, and she is talking about wanting tech companies to introduce labels on news content. So what she's saying is, if it's a source like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, it's signified by a particular label saying that this is being fact authorized, or like this is authentic news that needs to be verified, and it takes it to the top of the pile. Whereas independent media, which she refers to as the other stuff, so people like myself, when we do investigative journalism, when we cover something that's on the street, or even when an expert talks about something on a news story with an independent creator, well, that's the other stuff that needs to be labeled differently. Because what we're seeing now happening online is there's a lot more independent creators, there's a lot more news sources which don't rely on traditional mainstream media, and they're actually getting to the top of the pile. And these, legacy media outlets, these dinosaurs, they want a piece in this new regulatory framework that Julie Imam-Grant is talking about, that the European Commission is talking about, that the World Economic Forum is talking about. They want a slice in this to control the way that you see information. And if you don't believe me, listen to the European Commission person talking about this as well.
Ecosystem, how will quality content be pointed to? How will it be acknowledged? How will it be surfaced at great scale?
The lie is cheap and quick. That's why in the Code of Practice we have, for instance, the chapter on demonetizing. You said that disinformation makes money. We try to cut them off the money, to starve them out. That's why we have also advertising industry is on board. And we have many, many big companies which already said clearly, we don't want to connect our brands with the systems which spread disinformation. Yeah. So this was our approach. Now we have the code.
Well, that's a part of their approach, and we're already seeing this in practice on platforms like X. We had a whole heap of advertisers suddenly turn off their advertising on X to try to pressure Elon Musk into creating more censorship on the platform. And you saw how he reacted to that, especially against the Disney CEO, where he literally told him to fuck off on stage. So there is this overwhelming pressure being applied through these regulatory bodies like the EU, using this power with the advertisers to try to control online media. Now the WEF and in Davos right now, where all these people have gathered together, this is what they're working on as a main component of what they want to see over the next 2 years. And going forward, I think there's going to be more and more attacks on online media, independent media. We got the misinformation and disinformation bill being discussed in Australia. It's been discussed in, I believe, in New Zealand, in Canada, in America in some form as well, that they're trying this kind of stuff, but they're protected by their free speech, the Constitution, thank God, because they have those protections inherent. But, and what does the misinformation, disinformation bill in Australia, what does it exclude from being under that bill? Newspapers, right? Professional newspapers that they want to clarify. So these people are completely obsessed with this idea, and I think they're going to get their way. The only way that we can fight back is actually stopping this misinformation, disinformation bill. It's actually vital to the future of independent news, of actually challenging mainstream narratives, and keeping some of the power in the hands of the people is my firm belief. Anyway, guys, I will do more coverage on WEF tomorrow. I hope you've enjoyed this segment. If you want to support my work, you can, of course, subscribe. That's the best way to do it at the moment. So please hit the subscribe button. You can hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube, and that'll just let you know when I upload one of these videos. If you wanted to follow me elsewhere, you can find me on X, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, Odyssey, @TheRealRukshan. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.